Welcome participants to this short-term program in Heutagogy. Today, our point of discussion will entail the importance of performance coaching in the framework of Heutagogy. In our previous session, we have discussed regarding the various tools and techniques in facilitation. Today, we shall be discussing, analyzing regarding the various strategic interventions which are involved in performance coaching. The first one is motivational success story. You see, the motivational success stories are designed and narrated with the fundamental intent or valued intent of enhancing the achievement motivation of the learners. It also aims at building up a result focus or outcome oriented attitude within the learners. The success stories are designed in such a way that the characteristic features of the central character or the protagonist, they are very much similar to the learners from the demographic perspective, so that the learners can identify themselves, they can relate themselves with the central character or the protagonist of the success story. In the success stories, if the learners can identify or relate themselves with the central character or the protagonist, then the learners will get motivated by the success achieved by the central character. Eventually, they will try to replicate the outcome-oriented behavior of the central character, which is leading towards success. Let us have a discussion regarding the beneficial outcome of the success stories. If the success stories are realistic, and if the success stories encapsulate various motivational components, then they are destined to enhance the achievement motivation of the learners. Success stories can encourage the learners in developing an outcome-oriented approach or a result-focused approach. Success stories are destined to foster the analytical acumen and the creative potential of the learners. Success stories motivate the learners in introspecting, identifying their hidden potential and unleashing their pent-up competences in a very, very effective manner. Success stories can motivate the learners in identification and judicious deployment of the existing resources in their social matrix. Whatever the resources are there in the situation, these are called the situational drivers. What are the situational drivers? The situational drivers enhance the momentum of a character towards a goal, predetermined goal. So, influenced by the central character of the success story, the learners are also very much eager to map the situational resource and to utilize the situational resource or the resource embedded in the social matrix that is going to function as situational drivers, and they will be enhancing the momentum of the learners towards their predetermined goal. Success stories can also facilitate the learners to solve the situational problems through justified and judicious application of effective strategies. Let us come to the second intervention of performance coaching, which is called appreciative inquiry. You see, appreciative inquiry is a typical strength-focused intervention which focuses only upon the strength, the potential and the competences of the learners. It is not focusing upon the problems or the deficits of the learners. It doesn't believe in the deficits. It is focusing on the potential of the learners. So there are 4 steps in appreciative inquiry. The first one is the discovery phase. Here the facilitator, he floats various probing questions and is trying to trace out the past achievement of the learners. Say for example, a learner is suffering from resource myopia, that is, he is not being able to identify his own resource. The facilitator is asking him to narrate his own resource, his own competences, but he's telling that I am ignorant of my own resource and competency. So in this critical situation, the facilitator will continuously encourage the learner to narrate their past achievements. Once the learners narrate or affirm the previous achievements which has been incurred by them, the facilitator critically analyzes these achievements and traces out the competences which are guiding the learner towards those performances that are leading towards achievement. So you have to understand the cycle. Competency is leading to successful performance. Performance is leading to achievement. So if the learner dishes out their achievement automatically by critically analyzing the achievements, we can get the competencies as the causative factors of the performance as well as the achievements. The next phase is the dream phase. At this phase, the learners are encouraged by the facilitator to envision a bright and prosperous future that can be crafted by the judicious utilization of the competences of the learners. The next phase is the design phase. Here the facilitator inspires the learners to design a strategic action plan for utilizing the competences so that they can achieve their futuristic goal. The last phase is the deployment phase, and in this phase the facilitator is motivating the learners to deploy, to ensure judicious deployment of the strength and competences of the learners to achieve their desired goal. We are now having a discussion regarding a very important intervention in coaching and facilitation, which is design thinking. Design thinking in the present situation is being deemed as the most effective strategic methodology to solve the complex problems of human beings. Design thinking is a strategic methodology that makes it possible for the educators to identify the latent as well as the manifested problems of the learners on the basis of empathetic interaction within the learners. The learners must understand that the facilitator is having empathy towards them. Then only the learners will dish out their hidden problems to the facilitator. There are different stages of design thinking. The first one is empathy. We already covered it. The educator is going to have an interaction with the learners on the basis of empathy, empathetic sensitivity, and as a result of this empathetic sensitivity, they're getting more close to the learners. A conducive relationship develops between the educator and the learner. He's trying to perceive the problems of the learners by dint of their deep empathy towards the learners. The next step is problem definition. So, on the basis of the empathetic interaction, the educator is now in a position to identify the problem of the learners and to define the problem in a very structured manner with a logical, concrete, rational manner. The next step is ideation. At this phase, the educator is deploying his creative thinking and he is generating multifarious creative ideas, innovative ideas that do have the potential to solve the problems of the learners. After that, the educator is executing a comparative analysis among the different creative inputs generated by them. After the comparative analysis is trying to trace out the most cost-effective idea which is going to solve the problem of the learners. After the selection of the best strategy for alleviating the problems of the learners, the educator is crafting a prototype of that idea. The prototype is very much tangible and the prototype is very much concrete so that it can be administered practically. The next phase is the testing phase, and in the testing phase, the facilitator testing the prototype among the learners and eliciting the feedback from them. On the basis of the feedback ventilated from the learners, the educator now re-engineers and modifies the prototype and is trying to build up the final product, which is very much conducive and supportive to the learners. So if we summarize design thinking, the main principle of design thinking is empathy. There are multifarious strategic methodologies in the management arena, but this is the only strategic methodology which is characterized by deep empathy towards the victim of the problems. Empathy is evinced both at the time of problem identification as well as at the time of testing the prototype among the learners. Now we are coming to an intervention in performance coaching, which is a very comprehensive and integrated structure and which covers various strategies. It is basically implemented by the educator to empower the learners who are new into the educational arena, who are novice learners. The different phases of this intervention are being enumerated over here vividly. The first one is modeling. The educator is demonstrating a skill and he is motivating the new learners to comprehend his demonstrated skill and to follow it. The next step is coaching. Here, the educator is encouraging the learners to demonstrate that skill which was demonstrated by him earlier, and the educator is providing valued feedback to the demonstration of the learners. The third stage is scaffolding, where the educator is providing active guidance and handholding support to the learners so that they can demonstrate the skill, the acquired skill, the learned skill with precision and acuity. The next step is articulation. Here, the facilitator is encouraging the learners to narrate the process of skill acquisition and skill demonstration under the active guidance and handholding of the educator. The next stage is reflection. In this stage, the facilitator motivates the learners to execute comparative analysis between the demonstration of the learner and the demonstration given by the educator himself. Through this comparative analysis, the learners are being able to identify the deviation or the gap at the conceptual and the operational level while the demonstration of the skill learned by them. The final stage over here is exploration. In this final stage or the supreme stage, the educator is encouraging the learners to explore new ways of knowledge acquisition, the new ways of learning and the new ways of demonstrating the learned skill and knowledge with greater precision, greater acuity and in a flawless manner. Now we are concentrating on a very popular coaching model. It's a 4-step coaching model called the GROW model. The first one is the goal determination part, where the educator is facilitating the learners to determine the goal in the learning process. The next one is the reality, where the educator is encouraging the learners to have a situational analysis, and through the situational analysis they can decipher their present status where they stand. They're also getting sensitized regarding the available resources, which will be very much instrumental for achieving the goal. The third stage is the option stage, where the facilitator is encouraging the learners to identify the different alternative strategies that can be deployed by the learner for achieving the predetermined goal. And the last phase is the will phase, where the educator is facilitating the learners to express their intention, to express their aspiration or intention regarding their process planning and how they are going to determine the pathway through which they will proceed towards their predetermined goal. This is a more comprehensive model, the Oracle model, as compared to the previous one, that is the GROW model. The first stage is the determination of the objective and outcome. Here, the educator is facilitating the learners to determine the goals in the learning journey and also to ascertain the outcome that they want to achieve after the completion of the learning process. The next stage is the identification of the factors which can play an instrumental role in shaping the outcome. For this, the educator motivates the learners to execute situation analysis. The third step is the selection of the alternative. The educator motivates the learners to generate a large number of alternative strategies that can be applied for the achievement of the goals. The next one is creative ideas. Here the facilitator is motivating the learners to deploy their creative acumen and to add value to all the alternative strategies that are prevalent. Moreover, the facilitator is motivating the learners to develop some exclusive or unprecedented strategies that can be implemented for achievement of the predetermined goal. The next one is likelihood of success. Over here, at this stage, the evaluator is facilitating the learner. Here the facilitator is playing the role of an evaluator. He is having a collaboration with the learner, to be very precise. That is, in a collaborative model, the educator and the learner, they have a joint evaluation of the various alternative strategies, and finally they predict the probability of outcome achievement which is linked with each of the alternative strategies. The last part is the execution. Here the educator is facilitating learner to select the strategy out of the different alternative strategies. He is motivating the learners to identify the most cost-effective, instrumental, utilitarian strategy which is paving the path towards the outcome. Finally, the educator is supporting the learners to build up an operational plan through which the formulated strategy can be implemented for achieving the outcome. This is another model for goal determination and goal achievement, the various steps from the determination part towards the goal achievement part. And finally, once again, which we discussed earlier, the coach is functioning as an evaluator in collaboration with the learners, and they jointly identifies the gap between the predetermined objectives and the achieved outcome. Once the gap is identified, they critically analyze the gap and find out the causative factors that are crystallizing the gap between the predetermined objective and the outcome. Finally, the educator is facilitating the learners to develop various sorts of strategic interventions and to engineer those interventions for bridging up the gap between the predetermined objective and the achieved outcome. I wish you a productive and prosperous journey as a learning facilitator and a performance coach through the vast ocean of Heutagogy. Thank you very much, dear participants.